Have you ever found yourself questioning whether the concept of chosen ones is just a myth or legend? Or if there might be something deeper behind those words, something that calls to a small group of individuals and leads them through trials most of the world never even notices? Picture yourself standing in a crowd, hearing whispers of people who've walked through life-changing hardships, emotional storms, and spiritual battles. Someone says they're chosen, but how do we decide if that's just talk, or if there's a genuine path that sets certain individuals apart? And is it really that some are born with a special spark, or do they become who they are through a process so grueling that only a few could possibly endure it? Those are the kinds of questions we're going to explore right now, and by the end, you might see the journey of chosen ones through a very different lens. In many stories and traditions, the phrase chosen one pops up with a sense of grandeur. We see it in movies, read it in novels, and sometimes hear it as a spiritual concept. But what if the real chosen ones aren't handed anything on a silver platter? What if their path is marked by tests? Tests no one else sees. Tests that push them to confront truths about themselves and the universe. Truths so profound that most people turn away before they get too close. This is the first revelation about those referred to as chosen ones. Their standing isn't simply bestowed on them at birth. It's not about genetics, family lines, or mere luck. It's about a journey that transforms them from the inside out. This begs an immediate question. If such a journey exists, how does it begin? The answer often hides in plain sight. Life itself becomes the furnace in which people are forged. Circumstances appear, seemingly at random, that challenge you at levels you hardly knew you had. Maybe it starts with a loss of a job, a relationship, or a sense of personal identity. Maybe it arrives in the shape of an existential crisis, a feeling that everything you once believed is starting to crack. At first, you might assume you're merely going through a tough time. Yet, for those who are in the process of being shaped into chosen ones, these hardships often come in waves, layering one test upon another until you either break or transform. From the outside, it might look like ordinary life. Conflicts, heartbreaks, and big decisions. But for the individual going through it, something deeper stirs. An internal pull that says, this is not random. I have to face this. I have to understand something crucial about myself, about life, about my reason for being here. The chosen ones feel that pull so strongly it becomes inescapable. While others might shrug off or avoid these challenges, the chosen ones reach a point where avoidance feels impossible. There's a sense that they have no other choice but to walk through the fire. And maybe that's part of the definition of being chosen. You realize these tests aren't optional. You either face them and evolve, or you stay trapped in the same cycles forever. Of course, such an idea raises doubts for many people. Do you really need to confront spiritual or emotional darkness to discover who you are meant to be? Many would prefer to remain in comfort, or at least cling to illusions that make life easier. But illusions have a way of crumbling the moment genuine growth knocks at the door. That's why the first test for these emerging chosen ones is about identity. We spend so much time weaving identities from external materials, our roles, our achievements, our possessions, our relationships, that we hardly see the mask we wear. But life has a way of removing these outer layers, sometimes in dramatic fashion. You might lose a job you assumed defined you, or a relationship that validated your self-worth might end unexpectedly. Suddenly, you're left standing in front of a mirror without the usual props. Now, there is no title to protect you, no external relationship to lean on, no prized possession to serve as a crutch for your self-esteem. You are alone with the question, who am I? This moment can feel like staring into an abyss. It's deeply unsettling. Most people pull away right here and try to rebuild the mask as quickly as possible, returning to what feels safe. But the chosen ones, for reasons they might not fully understand, keep looking. They allow themselves to feel the discomfort, the anxiety, even the sense of emptiness. Because in that emptiness, a seed of truth waits. They sense that if they can just stand firm and ask, who am I, really? They might hear an answer that resonates at the core of their being. That answer may not come quickly. It may arise piece by piece, revealing both the light and the shadow that dwell inside. And through this first test, they discover that their identity was never entirely about the image they built for the world. There's a deeper essence, a spark of something divine or profoundly authentic that can only be contacted when external definitions are stripped away. One might think that passing this first test is enough. But no sooner have you wrestled with the truth of your identity than another formidable trial emerges. And this is the test of isolation. In a world flooded with social media, constant updates, and near-endless connectivity, we rarely allow ourselves true solitude. We're used to the chatter in our own minds, or at least the background hum of daily life. But in this second test, the noise we rely on for comfort is peeled away. It can happen by choice. You might feel an inexplicable urge to retreat from your usual routines, or by necessity, when circumstances force you to confront solitude. Either way, being alone for a weekend is one thing. Diving into deep emotional and spiritual isolation is another. Suddenly, there's no one else to distract you, to offer opinions, or to fill your head with their own agendas. You're left with your thoughts, your doubts, and your fears. Sometimes, that can be excruciating because we often discover how much we rely on external validation. Without others telling us we're okay, valuable, or lovable, we face the raw question of whether we believe it ourselves. That voice of self-doubt gets loud. But if you persist through the uncomfortable hush, something else begins to speak. A truer, more honest voice that has been drowned out by all the commotion of everyday life. The chosen ones learn to embrace this silence, to even find solace in it, because they realize that real wisdom often emerges in moments when there's no other voice to confuse or derail it. And yet, there's another layer to this isolation test. Some discover that the silence also pulls back the curtain on old wounds, insecurities, and regrets. They come flooding up to the surface, demanding acknowledgement. This can feel like a crisis, but it can also be your greatest chance to integrate parts of yourself you've neglected. In this sense, the isolation test is partly about wholeness. Are you willing to face every broken, damaged, or insecure part of yourself? Are you ready to sit with these feelings until you start to see them clearly and develop the compassion or determination to heal? Many people turn away at this point. It's far easier to plunge back into the busyness of the world. But those determined to continue this path toward transformation stay in the quiet, letting it do its work. And through this process, they grow more authentic and more self-aware than they ever thought possible. If all of that weren't enough, another challenge soon looms: the test of letting go. Even after shedding your superficial identity and learning to be with yourself in isolation, you likely still carry emotional baggage that weighs you down. It could be memories of betrayals, lingering anger at those who hurt you, or the disappointment of dreams that fell apart. We often cling to these things without even realizing it, imagining that they keep us grounded or give us purpose. Yet the chosen ones discover, often painfully, that clinging to old grievances or illusions prevents them from moving forward. Letting go is not about resignation or apathy. Rather, it's about releasing the dead weight of the past so you can enter the future unburdened. But letting go is deceptively difficult because we tend to be attached to how we think things ought to be. We might be deeply invested in a particular relationship or a personal aspiration. When these crumble, or when we sense they no longer serve our journey, we resist. We might complain. We might try to rebuild them. But eventually, the question becomes, are you willing to open your hands, release your grip, and trust that what is meant for you will stay and what is not will fade away? This is especially poignant for people who've built entire identities around certain relationships or achievements. The process can feel like losing part of yourself, but in reality, that part of you was never the real you. It was a version shaped by the external world, by expectations and fantasies. Letting go of it paves the way for something more genuine to emerge. Yet life being what it is, the tests don't stop there. The next challenge that often arises is known by many spiritual traditions as the dark night of the soul. It's the point at which everything you thought you knew, everything you relied on, is shattered or pulled away. Relationships might implode. Your career might collapse. Your health might falter. Or, even more disconcertingly, everything in your external life could remain fine while inside you're plunged into darkness and despair. It feels like a spiritual wilderness, where no signpost tells you which way to go. Doubt becomes a constant companion, and you might even start questioning the very meaning of existence. In this dark night, it's not uncommon to ask, why me? What did I do to deserve this? The pain is so intense and pervasive that it seems there must be some injustice, some reason the universe or the divine has singled you out for suffering. But here's the hidden truth. The dark night of the soul is not a punishment. It's more like a profound cleansing. It strips away everything that is not your core essence, giving you the opportunity to realize where true strength and true comfort come from. Many people give in to despair at this stage. They decide the journey is too painful. They might numb themselves with distractions, addictions, or cynicism. But those who push forward, clinging to the hope that there is meaning beyond the darkness, often discover a resilient light within themselves that's impossible to describe. It's like a small flame that doesn't go out, even when all else is in ruins. Finding that spark redefines you. You realize that even in your lowest moment, there's a part of you connected to something greater, a force or presence that can't be extinguished. This leads directly into the test of faith. While some associate faith exclusively with a religious context, here, faith can be understood more broadly as trust in the deeper process of life. It's one thing to have faith when everything is going well, but it's another to maintain it when you can't see a trace of light. Can you keep trusting that there's a purpose to this darkness, that life isn't merely random? Can you keep moving forward even when every day feels like it might swallow you whole? This test is essential because it separates empty optimism from the bedrock of genuine trust. Faith in a grand plan, or in divine goodness, requires that you acknowledge your pain without letting it define your reality. It means saying, I may not see the path, but I believe there is one, and I'm willing to take another step. If you've ever lived through such a period, you know how tempting it can be to throw in the towel. When nothing seems to change, when every hope you have appears to be dashed, how do you continue? And yet, the very act of persevering, of taking one more step despite the darkness, creates a spiritual fortitude inside you. Over time, you realize that despair, while understandable, is a choice, just as hope is a choice. The chosen ones keep choosing hope, even in the smallest of gestures. They choose to wake up in the morning and say one more prayer, or recite a single word of affirmation, or do one more act of kindness. They put one foot in front of the other because giving up would mean betraying the very progress they've made so far. And in that consistent, daily trust, something miraculous often begins to shift. It's not always immediate or obvious, but slowly, the gloom recedes, and you glimpse a new dawn. At some point in that process, a new test arrives, the test of surrender. You might ask, isn't surrender just another word for giving up? But in this context, surrender has a very different meaning. It's the letting go of your frantic need to control everything. Humans are great at believing we can control outcomes. Our relationships, careers, even the course of world events in some small measure. We plan, strategize, and hold on to certain illusions of how life must unfold. Surrender doesn't mean ceasing to care or becoming passive. Rather, it means recognizing that life is infinitely more vast and complex than our personal plans. We do our part, but then we let the current of life carry us. We remain engaged, but we don't fight every shift in the tide with fear or desperation. Imagine that you're floating down a wide river. You could thrash about, trying to swim against the current, or you could learn to navigate it, trusting that it will take you where you're meant to be. That's a loose analogy for what spiritual surrender looks like. It's a profound trust in the unfolding nature of existence. It's accepting that while you can't control every variable, you can choose how you respond to what happens. And in that acceptance, strangely enough, you often discover a power greater than anything you could have forced on your own. Because once you surrender, you're no longer wasting energy on resisting reality. You're aligned with something bigger than yourself, allowing that bigger force, call it the universe, call it God, call it life, to guide you to experiences and insights you might never have found on your own. Surrender can be terrifying at first because we equate control with safety. We think that if we let go of our plans, chaos will ensue. But from another perspective, what if the chaos we fear is only the unrecognized intelligence of the universe rearranging our life so that we can fulfill our higher purpose? What if the real chaos is in clinging to illusions that no longer serve us? The chosen ones, upon facing this test, often experience a sense of peace that they've never known. It doesn't mean they suddenly get everything they want, but they feel a deep rightness in whatever is happening, even if it's challenging. This doesn't mean they've become indifferent robots. They still feel pain, disappointment, and joy. But they no longer see these fluctuations as disasters or strokes of luck. They see them as part of a tapestry being woven by a hand far steadier and wiser than their own. By the time you pass through surrender, you might suspect the journey is over, that you've learned everything you were meant to learn. But there's one final test that emerges, and it's both simpler and more profound than all the others, the test of awakening. This isn't something measured in bullet points or a single aha moment. It's a shift in consciousness. It's as if the veil that separated you from a clearer vision of reality begins to dissolve. You become aware that you're not just a person going through trials in a random world. You're intricately connected to something vast, timeless, and alive. You realize that your identity, which you once believed ended at your skin or your mind, extends outward in ways you never previously imagined. You see that your life has always had a purpose, even when you felt aimless. And more than that, you sense that every challenge, every heartbreak, every dark night was a stepping stone guiding you toward this expanded awareness. In that moment of awakening, it might dawn on you that being chosen isn't about a label that sets you above anyone else. It's about having the courage and the tenacity to move through these tests: identity, isolation, letting go, the dark night, faith, surrender, and come out the other side changed. Instead of seeing yourself as separate from life, you begin to understand that you are life itself, expressing through a unique form. This realization often comes with immense gratitude, even for the painful parts of the journey. You start to see that those pains were catalysts, pushing you beyond your comfort zone so you could evolve and awaken. And ironically, once this awakening occurs, you don't feel the need to broadcast it or use it as a badge of honor. It simply becomes a quiet truth that shapes how you perceive yourself and how you interact with the world. Many spiritual teachings across different cultures point to this moment of awakening, sometimes calling it enlightenment, sometimes calling it realization, sometimes simply calling it coming home. The label doesn't matter as much as the inner change. You recognize that you are no longer the same person who began the journey. Yes, your outer circumstances might not look drastically different, though often they do change in meaningful ways, but your lens on life has shifted. Fear loosens its grip because you see that life unfolds through you and with you, not against you. Anger or resentment lose their power, because what is there to resent when you see everything as part of a bigger dance of growth? Even sadness, which will still arise, becomes more of a passing cloud than a permanent storm system. Awakening isn't an endpoint, though. It's the beginning of a new chapter. Once you perceive the reality of oneness, of deep connection, you're called to live from that place of understanding. The tests don't necessarily vanish. You may face more difficulties, new layers of letting go, new forms of darkness. But there's a fundamental difference now. You approach these experiences with the awareness that they're part of an ongoing unfoldment. You've learned the value of embracing challenges rather than running from them. You've discovered that on the other side of each trial lies an even deeper acceptance, an even more profound sense of connection. The cycle of testing and emerging stronger continues, but now you embrace it willingly, armed with the knowledge that these trials are doorways into greater clarity and compassion. In that sense, you realize that the term chosen one is a bit of a paradox. Anyone could embark on this path, but it's so arduous and soul-shaking that only a few do. Those who remain are chosen by their own choice, by their decision to walk forward even when the path is unclear, by their refusal to settle for superficial comforts. This is the secret. The chosen ones are not chosen by some distant power in the sky handing out golden tickets. They choose themselves. They choose the journey of depth, authenticity, and awakening, again and again, at every crossroads. Think back on the tests we've described: identity, isolation, letting go, the dark night, faith, surrender, and awakening. Each one offers a different lesson, yet they all serve a single purpose: to dismantle any illusions that block us from seeing our true nature. The illusions could be about who we think we are, how we think the world should be, or what we believe will make us happy. Each test chips away at these assumptions, forcing us to look deeper and deeper until, at last, we reach a point where we can't help but see a new reality. The hardest part is that we rarely know, at the time, which test we're in. Life doesn't come with a flashing sign saying, "You've now entered the second test, good luck." But upon reflection, we notice the patterns. We notice how a particular phase of our life demanded that we confront isolation, or how a certain crisis required a leap of faith. And with that recognition comes wisdom. Even after describing these stages, someone might wonder, is it possible to be in more than one test at once? Absolutely. Life doesn't always present these challenges in a neat, linear order. Sometimes we face isolation and letting go at the same time, or we find ourselves in the midst of a dark night even as we grapple with issues of identity. But there is a kind of coherence to the journey, a sense that each challenge is guiding us toward the same destination: deeper self-knowledge, greater wisdom, and a stronger connection with the essence of life. Consider, too, how these tests play out in your daily living. Maybe you're at work and feeling alienated, noticing that the usual social dynamics no longer resonate with you. Is that a sign you're in the test of isolation? Or perhaps you've been grappling with old resentments, feeling them bubble up unexpectedly. Could this be the test of letting go, reminding you it's time to release what no longer aligns with who you're becoming? If you look carefully, you'll see that these tests aren't reserved for special places or special times. They're woven into everyday moments: arguments, job changes, chance encounters, even quiet evenings alone with your thoughts. The difference is that once you become aware of them, you can approach them with curiosity and openness instead of fear and avoidance. Now, you might wonder, if I embrace these tests and keep going, does life become nothing but trials? It's a fair question, And the answer is more nuanced than a simple yes or no. Challenges don't disappear after you awaken. However, your relationship to those challenges changes. You may no longer see them as punishments or random events, but as opportunities for new insights. And over time, you might notice that your capacity to move through them grows. What once felt devastating may now feel more like a puzzle to be solved, or a wave to be ridden. You discover a resilience you didn't know you had, and that resilience opens doors to experiences and states of being that most people never access because they turn back at the first sign of difficulty. This is why we often say the chosen ones are ultimately those who choose. They choose to keep going when others stop. They choose self-honesty when others prefer comforting illusions. They choose solitude when the crowd's noise feels empty. They choose to let go when resentment would be easier. They choose to confront the dark night rather than numb it away. They choose faith over cynicism and surrender over control. And in that series of choices, they awaken to a life so full of meaning and insight that they no longer crave the superficial rewards they might have once chased. That leads to another question some people inevitably ask. How do I know if I'm one of the chosen ones? The simplest answer is that if you're drawn to exploring these deeper truths, if the prospect of undergoing these tests resonates with you despite how daunting they sound, then you might already be on the path. If something inside you says, "This is what I've been feeling," but didn't know how to articulate, that inner stirring can be a strong sign. However, being drawn to the path and actually walking it are two different things. Plenty of people flirt with the idea of transformation, but back away when reality bites. What separates the ones who pass through is the willingness to endure discomfort for the sake of authentic growth. Still, it's essential to note that no external authority can dub you a chosen one. The validation doesn't come from a group or a teacher awarding you a certificate. It arises from within, in the form of a quiet conviction that you can't turn back, that these challenges you face, however painful, are forging you into the person you were always meant to become. And once you've tasted even a small portion of that personal evolution, you realize there's no returning to old ways of being. Life simply won't let you fit back into the mold you've outgrown. If you're reading these words and feeling both a spark of excitement and a pang of dread, that's normal. Awakening is not comfortable. It's often messy, requiring deep vulnerability, honesty, and humility. You might find yourself having to reconcile with aspects of your past you thought you'd buried. You might realize that certain relationships are built on illusions, and letting them go will hurt. Or you might come face to face with a dream you've always had but never pursued, now feeling compelled to do so despite your fears. Each of these scenarios can be nerve-wracking, but remember that the alternative, remaining stuck and unfulfilled, comes with its own pain. When you reflect on ancient spiritual traditions or read about mystics and saints, you'll often see parallels to these tests. They speak of going into deserts, of wrestling with internal demons, of encountering immense darkness before emerging into the light. While the language or cultural context varies, the core experience remains strikingly similar. That's because the human journey of transformation transcends specific religions or cultures. It's something woven into our very makeup. We sense on a fundamental level that we're here to grow, to evolve, to experience the fullness of what life has to offer. And for some, that call is so insistent it can't be ignored. In modern times, we don't always recognize these phases as spiritual tests because they show up in the context of daily life. An unexpected crisis, a tough breakup, a job failure, or a health challenge. We might chalk them up to bad luck or just how it goes. Yet beneath the surface, each event can be a doorway to deeper self-discovery if we treat it as such. So the difference isn't so much the experiences we have as the way we approach them. A chosen one sees each hardship as an opportunity to learn and transform, while someone else might see it as a random setback or an excuse to feel bitter. The experiences themselves can look the same from the outside, but the inner lens makes all the difference. Then, once you've integrated the lessons from these tests, you begin to live from a place of awakened clarity. That doesn't mean you start floating above the ground in some mystical state, or that you become immune to sadness or frustration. You're still human, still subject to the ups and downs of being alive. However, there's an undercurrent of peace, a confidence that arises from having confronted your fears and illusions head-on. You no longer need external validation as desperately because you've seen your worth in the crucible of hardship. You no longer panic when confronted by the unknown because you've come to trust the flow of life. And while you continue to set goals and pursue your passions, you do so from a place of alignment rather than grasping need. Those around you might notice the shift. They might see you reacting differently to situations that would have once upset you. You may become a source of calm in a crisis, or offer deeper empathy to someone else in pain because you've been there yourself. This is one of the hidden gifts of the chosen path. As you heal and awaken, you become a guidepost for others, even if you never formally call yourself a teacher or mentor. Your very presence can help people see that there is another way to live, another perspective on suffering, and a richer definition of what success or happiness might be. Sometimes, that influence on others can be challenging. Not everyone will welcome your transformation. Some might miss the old version of you, the one who complained with them or stayed stuck in familiar cycles. Others might feel threatened because your growth makes them question their own stagnation. This is yet another test. Whether you can remain true to your path without letting fear of rejection pull you back. But by this stage, you usually have enough inner clarity to handle the pushback. You recognize that you can't force your journey on anyone else, nor can they stop you from continuing yours. Now, if any part of this resonates deeply and you find yourself thinking, I want to keep going, but I'm not sure I'm strong enough, realize that strength on this path isn't about bluster or bravado. It's a quiet resolve, a willingness to keep taking one step at a time. If you can keep making that choice, day after day, to face your fears, to be honest with yourself, to invite growth instead of comfort, you will be surprised at how your capacity expands. Strength, in this journey, often appears in the simple act of not giving up, even when the road is dark. You might also wonder about the pace of these transformations. Some people go through them rapidly, catalyzed by a series of intense events. Others experience them more gradually, over years of subtle shifts. Neither is better. The path is unique for each soul, and trying to rush it or slow it down often backfires. Trust that you're moving at the rhythm that suits your life lessons. There's no merit badge for completing your tests faster, nor is there shame in taking your time. The important thing is sincerity, doing the inner work with an open heart and a genuine desire to evolve. Throughout this process, a sense of humility tends to develop. After all, facing your shadow and your vulnerabilities makes it difficult to remain arrogant. You discover that the more you learn, the more you realize how vast the mysteries of life truly are. Humility, in this context, is not about belittling yourself. It's about recognizing that you're part of something much larger than your personal dramas. This recognition often coexists with a sense of wonder. Even ordinary moments, a sunrise, a child's laughter, a quiet evening, can take on an almost sacred quality because you're seeing them through awakened eyes. That's the reward of the final test. You become fully present, fully alive, and intimately connected with the flow of the universe. You no longer second-guess whether you deserve to be here, whether you have a purpose, because you see that your very existence is purposeful. Your presence is not random. It contributes to the grand tapestry of creation. And once you see that, how can you not approach life with a touch of reverence? How can you not want to express kindness and compassion to others who are also finding their way through life's tests? Which brings us back to the question, are you one of the chosen ones? Perhaps the best response is another question. Will you choose to keep going? Because in the end, that's what distinguishes those who complete this journey from those who abandon it. It's an ongoing choice, made in big moments of crisis and small moments of daily routine. It's a choice to stand in front of the mirror without your mask. It's a choice to sit in silence even when loneliness bites. It's a choice to let go when clinging feels safer. It's a choice to keep faith when darkness surrounds you. It's a choice to surrender control when your ego is screaming to do otherwise. And it's a choice to awaken, to see the world with new eyes, and to let that awakening shape every facet of how you live and love. Perhaps that's why so many spiritual traditions speak of awakening as both a gift and a responsibility. Once you experience a taste of it, you recognize that you have the power to elevate not only your life, but also to bring a measure of light to those around you. That responsibility can be as simple as showing kindness to someone who's hurting, or sharing an encouraging word with a friend who's lost in their own dark night. It can also manifest in bigger ways, launching a project that aligns with your soul's calling, writing a book, starting a charity, or simply being present in your community with the warmth of someone who genuinely sees the humanity in others. However it unfolds, the essential point is that awakening rarely stops with you. It expands outward. This is the hidden blessing of passing through all these tests. You become a vessel for something larger, not in a forced or preachy sense, but naturally, as a byproduct of your transformation. You have more empathy because you've felt profound pain. You have more patience because you've endured frustrations and disappointments. You have more courage because you've survived fears that once paralyzed you. And you have more love to give because you realize we're all on this journey together. Some people are just at different stages or facing different lessons. It's humbling and awe-inspiring at the same time. like standing under a vast starry sky and knowing you belong to something immeasurably grand. Yet you have your unique spark that no other star can replicate. If you sense that you are already on this path, or about to step onto it, consider this a gentle nudge to keep going. When the trials intensify and you're tempted to flee, remember why you started. Recall the inner calling that told you there was more to life than surface appearances. Think of how far you've come, how many illusions you've seen through. Remember that each test, no matter how fierce, has the power to bring you closer to the authentic core of who you are. And if doubt returns, remind yourself that countless souls before you have walked this path and found it worth every tear, every moment of anguish, because of the transformation it delivers. What about those who are unsure whether they want to be on this path? They might see the appeal of becoming a chosen one, but feel daunted by the rigors. That's completely understandable. The journey is not for the faint of heart. It demands a willingness to uproot your assumptions, face your darkest fears, and let go of deeply held attachments. But ask yourself, what is the alternative? To remain in a half-lived life, perpetually haunted by a sense that there was something more you could have discovered, something more you could have been? True contentment rarely comes from tiptoeing around challenges. It often emerges from fully engaging with them. So, if you feel the pull, don't ignore it for too long. Life has a way of knocking at your door repeatedly until you open it. And if you do open that door, you'll find that the tests, daunting though they are, can also be exhilarating. Each time you pass a threshold, like the moment you first confront your unmasked self, or the moment you truly surrender control, you experience a burst of liberation. You realize you've shed yet another layer of limitation or fear. It can feel like stepping into a larger version of yourself, one with more room to breathe and create. These milestones aren't just philosophical. They affect every aspect of your lived reality. How you wake up in the morning, how you handle conflict, how you perceive abundance and scarcity, and even how you relate to time and space. Over and over, you find yourself saying, I had no idea life could be this rich. Still, it's important not to romanticize the journey. There will be tears, confusion, moments of profound loneliness. There will be times you miss your old illusions because they offered a kind of superficial comfort. But once you've glimpsed the deeper truths, you know you can't remain satisfied with illusions anymore. That discontent becomes your ally, driving you forward into greater authenticity. Each difficulty faced and transcended becomes a testament to your resilience and the grace that guides you. By now, you can see that the path of the chosen ones isn't about being selected by some external deity who bestows magical powers. It's about a willingness to dive into life's deepest challenges. It's about harnessing every heartbreak, every disappointment, every spark of hope as fuel for awakening. People who become chosen ones do so through their own courage, through their repeated choice to face what's real instead of what's comfortable. And that choice is open to anyone, which paradoxically means that while not everyone will walk this road, everyone is free to do so if they feel the call. So, take a moment and reflect. How do these tests resonate with your own experiences? Maybe you're revisiting moments in your life that could have been part of your test of identity, or a period of isolation that changed you. Perhaps you recall the heartbreak that forced you to let go, or you think of a time you stood at the edge of despair, searching for faith in something bigger than yourself. Those memories, once painful, might now look like stepping stones that nudged you further down this mysterious path. And if you're in the middle of one of these tests right now, know that you're not alone. Many have been there before you, and many will come after. The darkness you feel can be overwhelming, but inside that darkness, a seed of light waits, your light. Trust that this process is not random cruelty. It's a crucible that can forge new strength and clarity within you. It's normal to feel uncertainty and fear, but don't let those emotions stop you from pressing forward. Indeed, sometimes fear is a sign you're on the edge of something transformative. Keep in mind that awakening is less about achieving a final destination and more about fully experiencing each step along the way. You don't have to rush it. You don't have to be perfect. You only have to be honest, willing, and persistent. Each test you pass adds to the cumulative tapestry of your growth, weaving together a life of depth, meaning, and self-discovery. And when you come across others who are also on this path, you'll sense a kinship that transcends superficial differences. You recognize in them the same spark, the same refusal to settle for half-truths, the same determination to find something real. All of this leads us to the final reflection. Once you've tasted this journey, you understand that being chosen is not a rigid status. It's a living process, unfolding as you move through these tests over and over again in different forms. As you awaken, you might find yourself called to help others, to share your experiences, or simply offer compassion to those still in the early stages of their trials. That's the beauty of awakening. It has a ripple effect that touches everyone around you. By healing yourself, you contribute to the healing of the collective. By finding your purpose, you inspire others to explore their own. By embracing your challenges, you model what it means to grow instead of shrink. It doesn't require grand gestures. Sometimes it's just your presence, your listening ear, your encouraging words that become a beacon for someone else. In this way, the chosen ones become quiet shepherds in a world often clouded by confusion and fear. Not shepherds in the sense of controlling others, but rather guiding lights who show, by their example, that transformation is possible. Each test becomes a gift, an initiation into ever-deepening layers of wisdom and compassion. And in the end, you see that the entire journey, from the first test of confronting your identity to the final test of awakening, was orchestrated for one purpose: to lead you back to the truth of who you are, a truth that transcends labels, illusions, and limitations. Now, the question that remains is, are you ready to embark on, or continue, this journey? Are you ready to confront the tests that stand between you and your deeper awakening? If so, prepare yourself for a path that will stretch you, challenge you, and at times, break you open. But also know that the reward on the other side is immeasurable. A life lived in alignment with your true nature, free from the chains of fear and pretense. It won't always be easy, but it will be real, and that reality holds a richness that far surpasses any fleeting comfort. If you're feeling that pull, I invite you to honor it, to give it the space and commitment it deserves. You might begin simply by taking time each day to ask yourself honest questions, to reflect on where in your life you feel stuck, or to practice letting go of small attachments. You could explore moments of silence, journaling, or prayer. Whatever draws you inward and helps you listen to the voice of your authentic self. And remember that help is available if you're open to it. Mentors, friends, spiritual communities, and professional counselors can all play supportive roles as you navigate this terrain. You don't have to do it all alone. Even though isolation is one of the tests, that doesn't mean you can't find encouragement and companionship when you need it. Ultimately, the path is yours to walk. Each person's version of the tests is unique. The shape and timing of your dark night may differ from mine, as may the lessons you learn about identity or surrender. But the essence of this universal process is the same: a movement from illusion to truth, from fragmentation to wholeness, from fear to love. And that is a journey worth taking, for it leads to a life brimming with purpose and connection. As you consider all of this, let the final words echo in your heart. The chosen ones are those who choose to awaken, to see the truth of who they are, and to walk through the tests that shape them into vessels of deeper wisdom and love. That option is open to you, right here, right now, as you breathe in and out, as you make choices each day that either support your growth or hold you back. If you feel the spark of recognition, if something within you says, yes, this is my path, then step forward with courage. You have everything you need to undertake this journey: the seeds of faith, the capacity for surrender, the will to endure. And most importantly, you have life itself flowing through you, guiding you toward the highest expression of who you can be. Thank you for sharing this time with me, and for allowing these words to reach the depths of your heart. The questions we've explored, about who we really are, why we face such challenges, and how we can transform ourselves, are the very questions that can spark a profound shift in our being. May you find the strength and grace to face each test as it arises, and may your journey lead you to a sense of freedom and purpose beyond your wildest dreams. Remember, this path is not for the faint-hearted, but for those who know that beyond each dark night lies a dawn brighter than any they've known before. Keep this in mind as you move forward, and never forget that the greatest rewards often come to those who persist, who let go when needed, and who trust in the process of becoming the fullest, truest versions of themselves. You are on this road for a reason. You have something inside that calls you to keep asking questions, to keep growing, to keep seeking. Honor that calling. Let it lead you through the twists and turns, the highs and lows. Embrace the solitude when it arrives. Let go of what no longer serves you. Carry faith in your heart during the darkest hours. Surrender to the flow that knows precisely where you need to be, and awaken to the reality that you are already complete. The tests will keep coming, but each one can be a doorway to greater understanding, if you let it. I'll leave you with this final invitation. If your heart resonates with what you've heard, if you sense that spark of deeper curiosity and the willingness to walk the path of the chosen ones, then make the choice. Decide that you will not turn back, that you will not settle for anything less than the truth of who you are. And as you navigate your own unique challenges, Remember that countless others have walked this way before and stand ready in spirit to support you. We are all connected. Your victories, your insights, your love, they ripple outward, touching lives in ways you may never see or comprehend. And that, in the end, is the power and mystery of being truly alive. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And may your journey be blessed. Keep stepping forward. Keep believing in the light that shines even in the darkest moments. And one day you will look back and see that every trial was a precious step leading you to this awakening. May your days be filled with courage and humility, with devotion and curiosity, as you move toward the fullness of your calling. And until we meet again, remember, life has already chosen you, if you are brave enough to choose it in return. Let your heart be your compass, let your soul be your guide, and trust that this path, difficult though it may be, will deliver you to the doorstep of a life richer and more meaningful than you ever imagined. God bless you, and see you in the next video.